2021. What do we have? Status, we have lots of demos.
My colleague David should have one, but he is not yet here.
Who has?
I may have a demo.
Maybe. That's it. Okay. Demos, topics. Blog post. I mentioned that I will do a blog post also to my team, so, but I haven't done it yet, obviously. And Outro 2.0. So, status, this one, everything is up to date. We are the 17th, nothing has been updated since last time. Then this one, what do we have? Dates, net 509 and 3118, updating the .NET versions. Okay. HtmlSanitizer update. Michael, use assets build for liquid intellisense. Removed, and now they are what is that?
You could have a look at the assets.json file, maybe. He is only copying the liquid-intellisense file.
What is that?
That's just a registration we use so that we can download modules installed from the liquid project. Which would presumably install the Monaco editor as a div dependency so that when you install build, you have the references.
So nothing to do with the customer registration on NPM.
No, it's related to the multiple registrations of NPM that we do.
That's not that. Okay, that's not the correct NPM. What is this NPM?
NPM.js.
Okay, so that's something we do. Okay, interesting.
It was because we ran into a whole bunch of
that has a package.json, we give a name.
Okay, it's a local thing. And then you just depend on that and it will pull that. So that's a shortcut. Macro editor. Output. Assets macro. Output. TS compiler option. TS compiler option. Okay, so that's the way to forward these options to the TypeScript pipeline. Use assets built for liquid intelligence. Okay. So before asset macro liquid intelligence, and now where is the source? This is TypeScript file. Okay. Okay, so there is one source now. There used to be two sources. So there is one source. The Girl pipeline will build the JavaScript file, and then copy that file to the output and minify it using the Girl pipeline also. Okay. Okay, again, fallback to the default picker field result provider. Fallback to the default picker field result provider. Okay, sure, there is no thing in this list. Allow file attachments on submit. This is a PR we merged on Thursday because you could not add a file to the forms. Okay, and the deployment steps. Expanded strongly typed example with a date endpoint. Oh yeah, this is a sample. It shows how to update a content item. That's something that people ask about using API in this case. Implementing zone shape alternates. So done. So now you can do something like this. Examples, zone footer, zone content, to redefine the template for a specific zone with examples in liquid and razor to just meet the current one, or to have a zone that is completely free of any tags, but obviously you can add tags now. And this is just iterating over each items of the zone to render them. So if you need to add separator, you can add separator also. Custom shape table provider. whenever. Oh, we have zone here. And if it has a zone name, then let's create an alternate with this zone name. Good. Add site setting, deployment content editor settings, and people features, some more site settings. Well, refactoring also, using the good way of defining site settings, deployment step. Extension method that was added last week or 2 weeks ago by Lynn. Adjust OpenID server settings, deploy source to match recipe step. Fixing a bug in the OpenID deployment. And some tests. Interesting. A new contributor, use step model for OpenID server settings. So that's an update to the update. Updating BenchmarkDotNet, updating SDK, updating Cypress, and document dependency version selection. Resource management option configuration. Okay, set dependencies. It's not just, yeah, depending on something we load that thing, and also ensure that this is defined after that. Okay. Good. And that's it. Questions, comments? Zoltan, I don't see your colleague here. Do you want to do a demo, or do you want Dean to do a demo? Maybe.
Yeah, let's. Dean, please do a demo. Let's hope he arrives.
Maybe. Not sure. Dean?
Okay, I will try and do a demo, but things look like working again.
That's okay.
Let me share my screen.
With beautiful fonts. Oh. What happened? It's not a Mac.
It's not a Mac. No, I've moved back to a PC now.
So I was like, I wanted to see beautiful fonts, and now these are
No, you're not going to get
again. Oh.
You're straight back to the ugly fonts.
Oh.
It's weird, I must admit, programming in Visual Studio. Haven't done it for about 2 years, 3 years. But yes, I do miss my Mac a little bit still, but it's nice. So this is a feature I've been working on some time ago, and it is worth a demo because it needs just a little bit of discussing, but we've had an open issue for a while now to be able to include or exclude particular features from certain tenants, but allow them on other tenants. So this allows a bit of configuration for that. There's no UI for it yet at the moment because that's probably the discussion point. But let me demonstrate how it works for a start. So at the moment it's configured through your app settings configuration. So we have a setting in the app settings called features, and then we have rules that you can apply to the various features. And I'll explain, but because of the way ASP.NET Core configuration works with arrays, these are I've defined these as specific places in the array because they're a key value pair rather than an array. And when you're merging them like we do here, it can mess up with things if you don't use that. But the idea is you can have a role which either excludes an expression based on the feature names, or we have an include rule here. So what I've done here is, by default, for some reason I decided to pick on Orchard Core.templates. I don't know why, but by default they are excluded from all tenants. But then on default tenant we use an include rule where the default tenant, i.e. the host, gets everything. So there's a star there for that. And then on the blog I use the same rule again because I was just being specific, and I've included the agency theme where it's excluded up here on all the other tenants. So the blog is the only tenant that can, and the default tenant, the only one that can run the agency theme or see it. So how this will work is with the sites that I've got here. If we look at the features for the host tenant, we'll see that they'll have the templates feature. And if we look at their themes, you'll see that they have as the agency theme. If we go across to blog 1, which was the one which it's excluded from, you'll see if you look in the features list here, the templates are not available. And if we look in the themes, we'll see that on this particular theme, the agency is allowed because we specified that. But if we go to another one of the blog ones here, blog 2, which doesn't have any specific rules, you'll see there's no agency theme to be selected. And if we look at the features, there will the templates feature because it's not listed. So that's the feature. What we need to do now, or what I need to do now, is put some UI around it so that we can also configure this from the UI, so that we can potentially go in here and have a list of features that you could check on and off, which would set the rules for you in your app settings file. Any questions at this point?
I have comments, I have suggestions, well, things to think about. So it's not a suggestion, it's just, let's think about that. So right now your rules, they are at the tenant level. What if the rules were at the feature level? Meaning when we edit the features, or when we're on the feature screen, we could say, hey, be careful, this feature is only allowed on the default tenant, or only allowed on blog 1, blog 2. You see the opposite direction. Or is disallowed on the new tenants.
So when you're creating a tenant, do you mean, or when you're in the features?
I mean the setting right now that yeah, the screen will follow the settings, but the settings here are defined per tenant for each feature. What if a setting was defined per feature for each tenant? So it will be like allow, disallow, and you will list tenants, like you could do star for all tenants, or you could do, would it make sense to say, because here the issue is that if I add a new tenant, then I have to add new rules.
like this, for example.
Yeah, and it's not. Yeah, or you could say well, there could be an allow disallow with different patterns. This way I could say exclude star to exclude this feature from all the tenants. Or exclude not default to say, you see what I mean?
Yeah, so you'd put the rule in there as well, so
and both have advantages actually, because what I'm talking about will help when you create tenants, because when you create a new tenant, it has no roles, right?
Correct.
Which means...
and it could go either way on this. I did wonder, similar to what you were thinking about, whether we did it on a tenant by tenant basis or whether we did it on a feature by feature basis. I think I kind of settled on maybe it makes sense to have your default tenant tends to be the one that you let everything happen on, but your other tenants tend to be the ones that you want to restrict down a little bit. So that's just my particular experience. So
could it be fixed by creating profiles that you can inherit from and override? So a profile will define what features can be enabled or not. The default profile is just allow everything and is applied to the default tenant. But then you can also have a default profile for new tenants. And then you could use your rules to override the profiles.
So that could work quite well and could solve one of the other problems that I have. Actually, I like that. For example, so let's say.
And it's just a set of rules, like you have that, like include, exclude. Okay, each profile is a set of rules, include, exclude, and you can point to a profile and add more rules to override the profile. But this way, you can even admin the profiles in the UI.
Yeah. So the problem with this whole thing with the configuration stuff that I ran into when I started to look at the UI is because of this key value pair thing, and because when we look at the actual app settings that we write in here, when we actually save the tenant settings, when you edit the tenant here and set them up, we actually only allowed to write strings here. We can't write configuration key pairs because we merge from so many different places. It's complicated to merge them correctly.
So it has to be in the database?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the database, but we can write strings. So a profile name, write quite easily.
So just one. This way in the profile solves the issue. I see.
So the profile actually solves that issue, but you would still have to edit your app settings manually to write the rules for the profiles, unless we put it in the database,
yeah,
which is another option.
Well, if you want them to be dynamic, they have to be in the database. If they can be static, then yeah, it's.
I would have thought it was enough that they could be static, but the idea of profile does.
If it's based on per feature, it should be able to be static, because you can only add a feature or a module statically. You have to reference it. So at that point, you can say, and by default, this feature is not available unless for default. And then you redeploy.
Yeah, or you're using the database shells connection, so that's actually stored in the database, so you can edit it. It becomes a lot simpler, I suppose, code-wise, to have a screen here which selects profile rather than listing all the features and ticking and deselecting them.
But it's also hard to enforce the profile if it's in database because it's too late maybe to enforce it. Let's say you change the profile, you disable a feature, but it's already enabled on the tenant.
So I should point out actually that this feature doesn't, all it allows you to do is enable features from the UI or to see them in the UI. It doesn't scan the dependencies if you suddenly disallow a feature and turn it off. It doesn't stop a recipe, or it stops a recipe that's being run here, but it doesn't stop a setup recipe. Stops the setup recipe from enabling a feature, but it doesn't stop a module taking a dependency on a feature and force enabling it or anything like that. So all it does is, because
I think it should do it at the lowest level, like when we list the features to enable, we should say no, it's part of the disallow list, so we can't do that.
Yeah, so it's on the listings, but it's not on any of the dependency. Like if it does check the dependencies of your features, so if there's a dependency of a feature that you're not allowed, then you won't be able to install it as a tenant. Yeah, no, so actually it pretty much does do all that, except for turning features off when you change the disallow list.
Yeah, dynamically that's fine. At least if on startup it prevents it from being executed. So yeah, that's necessary to be able to manage what features are available per tenant, but we need to find a way. Profiles might be a good solution because it's like roles, but for tenants. Because when you have tenants, you know what type of tenant it is, and you're like, oh no, this is the standard plugin tenant, so it has access to these properties. You don't want to set them up again all the time. You want to reuse the predefined set of rules. And then if you want to override with custom rules, sure, that might be part of the settings. But being able to select a profile and change the profile, that might be nice.
Yeah, well, I think a named profile is nice, and I'll have a look. Maybe with the way we can store that in the database, should be possible.
Yeah, I'm sure if it's part of the core features, because today the list of I'm sure it can be in the database somehow.
Yeah, probably. So potentially if it was profiles, then we might you might end up with a similar UI to the media profile stuff. Whereas you create a profile, you just have a list of features that you can check or disable.
Yeah, then there's a question. Can you have two lists like the allow, the denied, or is this just whitelisting? And then when there is a new feature, you can't add it to any tenant because it's not there. You have to add it to the profile first.
It would want to be a setting, wouldn't it? You might have an include list or you might have an exclude list.
You might want
side by side. Yeah.
That's hard to say actually, because when you reference a new module and you restart, do you want the feature to be, let's do that. Let's make it available by default, but the profile is just disabling features. That's what you want. Today we have everything available, so let's just make the profile to be able to disable stuff.
I think that would make more sense. It's generally more about
because usually you want a profile to prevent stuff from happening, like so.
Yeah, like if you have a couple of modules that are specific to one client, you don't want them showing up on the list of another 10 at all.
Yeah,
that kind of stuff.
Mm.
Cool, good ideas.
And
could we in any case have an extension point for cases where you want to implement your own logic? So not just overriding the whole service, but within there.
Well, the validation service at the moment is based around those rules, so you could always jump in there, I imagine.
Yeah, but basically what I'm talking about that this code would be in the implementation of I don't know, feature validation rule provider, and this service would execute all of those. So
today, when the list of features to enable is built, we should have an event that say, okay, this is the list of features to enable for this tenant. Remove some or add some, and then your feature DIN will just also remove some or add some. In this case, remove some. But then Zoltan's feature will be able to remove some or add some based on their own rule. So the profile is one way to change this list. And then you can add some other coding-based ways to change this list. But it's done during the event when the list of features to enable is built. There is the thing in the shell services, like get enabled features. And when it's computed,
get all features.
And when it's computed, you apply the profiles here, and something else can do something else on this list. Remove, add, whatever, from any logic.
Yeah, makes sense. Cool.
Okay. Thank you, Zoltan.
David has internet issues, so he'll be able to demo next week.
Next week then. So I will share my screen again. Blog post, I haven't done that. I have a topic Orchard Core 2.0. What's next for Orchard Core in terms of big features with well, 2.0 or 1.x, just to have brainstorming to see what's missing, what crazy ideas you have, feedback from 1.0, what could we improve, what should we work on first or next. I will start with one. Data localization. I think it's called data localization. We have a PR started from Hisham and Jasmine. I think it's called data localization, right? The idea of being able to localize any string that you type in YAML, like the content types, like what else? Field names, stuff like this. I think it's dynamic data localization, maybe.
We call it dynamic? Yeah, maybe dynamic.
Yeah. So this is important because people working on multilingual sites want that, because that's data that is it's type metadata, or there are more examples for that, error messages, things like this, that can be localized because they are not content items, but they are still dynamic data, so we need to be able to localize them. So there is good progress on that, just a few more work and it should be usable. Other ideas? What do you think, even in priority order, like, is there something that you miss?
There's the Elasticsearch PR that could be merged quickly.
So Elasticsearch. I will write that we have a PR already. Okay. And not even if it's not a PR, right? Something that, okay, that would be great to have that. And maybe we should put it on the roadmap. So if I go on the roadmap, actually, we'll get some ideas.
I'd really like to have content definitions built from multiple sources, and one of them being from code, so not editable through the UI and hard typed content models. We talked about it a long time ago.
So it's about content type definitions. Extensibility.
Probably a good description.
Just dynamic. And also we need to, okay, improvements. This new UI also to make it more easier to create. Like we could imagine creating field types like an address. You could drag and drop that and change all visually. So something.
Yeah, we talked about doing it.
Like craft. Yeah, the UI is not good, so we need something more spa. Responsive. Is that? I think responsive. Yeah. Change content type definitions by code. But not static, dynamically. So it's not stored, it's just altering the content type definitions.
Yeah, statically. Statically in code, not stored. Just defined in code.
So when you list the content, when you go in the UI and you see the content types, then you can see one. Because today you can do a migration step, right? That creates stuff, and it's there.
It's horrible. It's hard work, and then you can edit it afterwards and break all your templates by deleting parts if you want. Whatever. I just think it'd be really nice if, you know, for people that are using Razor and want to use strongly typed models, if we had support for strongly typing a content item to a model.
So is it a different point? Or is it what you actually meant?
That was what I meant.
Okay.
Just an idea.
I see. Strongly type content type. I see. So you create the class and then it's available as a content type, and you can still go in the UI and change some properties, but there's a class for that.
Yeah, maybe you can't delete some of the things on the class, but maybe you can set some of the settings.
So creating a content type could be just like create a class with an attribute and then, oh, it's a content type, and the properties are fields or parts.
Exactly.
Maybe some parts could be undeletable because it's from the type. If you define a field or something,
I don't think if you have a content type as a class, you could be able to delete a field or one of these properties from the UI.
Yeah, from the UI.
You can always change maybe how it's rendered, like hide, something like that. Okay. don't render. Yeah, might be also something to look into, like, well, we have display modes, so you could have a display mode for a field or part that says hide, or it could be a generic, independently from that, we could have a generic property on all fields and parts, that a checkbox in the setting that says don't render, such that the current coordinator, when it tries to render a part in a field, will see that there is this property and say, no, I should not render that. But it's for the dynamic rendering, so that will not apply for it. So yeah, I'm not 100% for that. But yeah, that's it, maybe. Okay. Security. We have
Security
these
headers.
security headers. Don't we
Yeah,
have that already?
Not yet. There's an open issue about it.
Okay, so security.
I think Jean-Philippe has something
Yeah.
to look at that.
Something like that. A feature to configure the default security headers.
And there was the guy that did the GraphQL PR that had also made something.
I think I've seen something like that. We even included it part of the security module that has HTTPS. So to be checked. Accessibility. Admin. Okay, Jasmine did some work at some point. Few, but I mean, it works. Deployment and hosting. Deployment and hosting, so there is something. Cloud scale. We talked about it years ago, and Chantier made some work to support that, but we still need to do the feature that spread tenants, multiple servers, okay, but not duplicate. That's still to be done.
Speaking of tenants, tenant deletion in a generic way.
Delete
Also
tenants.
have a pull request about that.
But it can delete tenants, but not the database.
Well, yeah, in very specific cases, you can just delete the folder.
But yeah, it's not even yes and no, because like if you're something like there, you can't delete the folder. You have to, there it is. You have to delete the database, and at the same time, I'm not sure you want to delete the database when you delete the tenant. Should we have soft deletes for tenants? Well, today a soft delete is a disable. Yeah. Right. So you could say that if you want to remove a tenant without deleting the database, well, it's called a soft delete, disable it. Because maybe it will be the first step, like you have a customer and you can delete the tenant, but 3 months after, if there is really no reason to resuscitate it, then okay, let's delete it. And then it's, yeah, let's delete all the data. And maybe for legal reasons, you want to delete everything, right?
Yep.
Okay.
You could also want to backup.
Yeah, there is someone asking for that. Yeah, backing up the database, we can't do that because that's very specific to each database and to where you want to put the backup. So that's some infra work to do. Like, okay, let's back up the databases regularly of the customers and the file system and everything. What we can improve is a full export of the data, like content items and a full import export, something like that. But can you always be sure that it will be importing everything? I mean, it's more like having all the good steps to export, import all the things you want. But the real backup is, it seems to me that it's like it has to be done at the database level plus the file system level based on your environment, your system. I'm not sure I will put it there as a big step.
Well, full import export is quite important though. Not really for backup purposes, I would argue, but for development and for deployment, of course.
But can we do something that is full? How can you ensure that it's full? Because it's just based on each feature that does something. That should provide some steps to do things.
Well, yeah, I don't think anything groundbreaking. Just plug the holes that there are still in the import story.
Okay, so it's so improve or ensure.
To be fair, I should just finish off that secrets module, which sorts of holes.
Secrets management, but that's rated and unrated.
It fills a lot of the holes in the import-export story.
Yeah, that's part of it. But each module, yeah, so should have stuff. Secrets is one part which is not based on modules, but that's part of things that you want to import export from the server. Okay. That. In terms of, so do people need an output cache feature? I'm sure at some point we'll need it. Someone will need one.
I don't know, it was very popular in Orchard 1, wasn't it?
It was, because it was slow. So it's like WordPress. You can't deploy a WordPress site without output caching.
And yet with Orchard Core, it's so fast that...
But it depends also on the scale, because at some point, imagine you have a site that has millions of requests per second. Maybe you will require output cache. But maybe you will say, I don't need an output cache feature. I can just use Nginx or whatever proxy to do the caching.
I was going to say, would you not just use Fastly or something if you were at that scale? Not that I'm against the feature, it would be a great feature. I love cache, love things going faster. But I have been very pleased with the donut caching that we've already got.
Mm-hmm. Something that has an advantage from output caching, well, compared to proxying, is that you don't need to set up something else on infra. You just enable a feature. So
yeah, for sure.
that's an advantage. I know the .NET team is looking into scheduling it for .NET 7 as part of ASP.NET Core, because there is no such thing. There is a response caching, but it's not output. cache features. So it might come for free at some point, and we will just need to do some configuration. So that.
Sorry, what's the difference between response caching and output caching?
The response caching, you have to change your code to return custom headers in the response, such that the middleware will be able to cache the response. With output cache, you will not define it for each API. Okay, it's you invert the responsibility. It's not your code that says how to cache the result. It's you that says this route is cached by this way. For instance, with response caching, you would have to change the content item controller to say cache all the content items for 10 seconds in the code. You can't do that, right? So output cache, you define rules outside of the system to say cache everything which is /country/star for 10 minutes. And don't cache that. And you see, that's different.
Wouldn't an output cache take the caching headers into account there? Because in the end,
it should also take that into account, probably. But usually you don't want that. You want to override whatever the API says.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a different feature. And sometimes you don't want also to cache APIs at all, but just page sites or a section. So that's a different component. It does some similar things, but that's a different component with different configuration logic. It might also have more features than the response caching, because response caching, you can say, okay, public or private cache for 10 seconds, but you can't say, oh, return the value, like the grace period, like return the value if it's more than 10 seconds away, but I will still compute it to store the next value for the next guy that comes and requests. So there are many features you can put in output cache you can't with response caching. Output cache. What else? That's all.
What else do we have on the roadmap there? That's some of that GraphQL stuff.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I forgot. I was just looking at that. No, there is everything here. Distributed hosting. I put that. This I can do. I put caching, entity API. I put that and that. Oh, there is something else. A nice feature well, if we look at all the features, it's kind of important. Our table content items.
Oh yeah, we talk about that so many times.
So useful. And I think we have everything. No, we can't have everything, but these are the things we can think about. It's a good set of features to put on the roadmap. I will update the roadmap with that. We're just adding stuff. And this API, as a reminder, is a way to be able to create concepts like content items. A content item is an entity, okay, that is versionable, that is what? Securable, listable, stuff like that, okay? Maybe you want stuff that are just versionable, and not editable. well, so it's a way to decompose content items into different, all these concepts. So content item will be a thing that is created. Oh, like you can compose them from parts and feeds, okay? But maybe you want your workflows to be versionable and you don't care about parts and feeds in your workflows. They are not content item for that reason, but maybe you want them to be versionable. So that's an idea, to create classes, entities that have behavior like versionable, like composable. So that. Good list, I think. I will update that. Questions, comments? I have a big one, but I'm too shy to write it down. But we'll say don't do that. Remove front end. It's my old idea that maybe we should just have a backend and let people write their own controllers and views to create their front end. And the blog post will not just be an aggregation of content type, but also some controllers to display a blog post and to display taxonomies and everything. So yeah, that's our idea. To do less and just show how to do things so people will do things. That's the idea. Good? Perfect. See you on Thursday for triage and next Tuesday, nothing special for the next meeting. Maybe a demo from Lombiq, we'll see. Thanks everyone.